class, everyone. I'm Dr. Brian. Today we're going to be learning about the brain, and to start things off, there's two hemispheres. Does anyone know what they are?
The left and the right?
Great job! What are the functions, Tegan?
The left controls language, logic, math, and is not emotional. The right hemisphere controls spatial awareness and emotions.
Excellent! Now there are 4 lobes of the brain. Does anyone know what they are?
I do, Dr. Brain. Here's the frontal lobe.
That controls language, motor function, problem solving, emotions, personality, planning, creativity, and filter.
Here's the parietal lobe.
That controls sensory perception and some speech.
Only in the left hemisphere.
Here's the temporal lobe.
Which processes auditory information, smelling, and taste.
Here's the occipital lobe.
I forget what that one does.
Do you want a hint?
Yes.
Oh!
You can see what's inside of a brain?
Yeah, what are its functions?
That's a great question, Tegan and Noel. There are many different parts of the brain that each have their unique function, like so.
This is the pituitary gland. It controls growth and development and other endocrine glands.
This is the midbrain. It controls important functions in motor movement, specifically of the eye and auditory or visual processing or sensory information.
This is the pons. It controls muscles, sleep, and hearing.
This is the thalamus. It's a station for incoming motor movement and sensory information, such as hearing, taste, sight, touch, from your body to your brain.
This is the hypothalamus. Controls body temperature, hunger, and thirst.
The medulla controls our heartbeat and breathing, primarily the center of the body functions. The cerebellum controls balance and posture. The cerebral spinal fluid is a liquid in between the arachnoid and pia mater. Its purpose is to cushion and support the brain, basically to prevent concussions, and it also flows through our ventricles. Corpus callosum is the connection between the right and left hemisphere. It transmits messages between the two. The motor cortex controls voluntary movement, an area within the cerebral cortex. And the somatosensory cortex is responsible for receiving and processing sensory information, such as touch, temperature, and pain. Also, in the Broca's area, it controls language expression, and is primarily in the frontal lobe. It directs muscle movement involved with speech. In the Wernicke's area, it controls language reception and comprehension of words being heard.
Now class, we're going to learn about the 2 major systems in our body, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Which one do you want to hear about first?
Let's do the central nervous system. I know there's 2 major parts, but I forget what they are. Do you know what they are, Noel?
Yeah, the brain and the spinal cord.
Now we know the central nervous system, but what's the peripheral nervous system?
Great question. It's everything in our extended body, like our arms and our legs. It's made of the somatic nervous system and the automatic nervous system. Does anyone know what the somatic nervous system does?
I know. It controls voluntarily muscle movement, like how I just raised my hand.
Great job. Noelle, do you know what the automatic nervous system does?
It controls involuntary muscle responses, like our digestive system, blinking, and breathing.
Excellent. Now let's talk about these little tiny things in our brains called neurons. There are 3 types of neurons. The first one is unipolar or monopolar, the second one is bipolar, and the third one is multipolar. Multipolar neurons are only found in invertebrates. An example of an invertebrate is a worm, aka an animal without a spine.
So, do I have a spine?
Duh!
Looking deeper into neurons, they have many little components which make them up.
The cell body contains the nucleus or the brain of the cell. Nucleus is the brain of the cell. Dendrites are extensions from the cell body, and their purpose is to receive chemical and electrical messages. Dendrite spines are the little bumps on the dendrites. Axons are extensions from the cell body. Its purpose is to pass along messages. Myelin is the fatty coating around the axon, and its purpose is to speed up or make the messages pass through the axon faster. The bouton is a bump at the end of an axon. Nodes of Ranvier are indentions in the myelin. A synapse is a connection between 2 nerve cells who don't actually touch, and a synaptic cleft is a space in between the bouton and the dendrites. Neurotransmitters are the chemical and electrical messages that pass through the axon.
There are two other systems in our body, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system speeds our internal functions up, like our heart rate.
An example of this is running. Or a roller coaster. Chug, 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 chug.
Whee!
I think I'm gonna be
The
sick.
second system is the parasympathetic nervous system. This one slows down our internal functions.
An example of this is meditating.
Oh.
Or resting after a big race.
Hey Noelle, catch!
Hey, why'd you throw that?
To show you your reflex response. Reflexes don't involve the brain because the information is too slow to get there. Let's look at a spinal cord for reference.
Here you can see sensory information entering through the top of the spinal cord and motor information exiting out of the bottom.
I have one last lesson for you guys, and that's how you cut the brain. There are 3 methods to it. Does anyone know them?
The first one is a sagittal cut, which is straight down the middle, leaving a right and left hemisphere. The next one is a horizontal cut, which is sideways, straight across, leaving a top, which is superior, and a bottom, which is anterior. Lastly, there's the frontal cut, otherwise known as the coronal or transverse cut, which is when you divide the front and the back. Other names for the front are anterior or ventricle, and other names for the back are posterior or dorsal.
Great! Now who wants to practice? Who's brave enough to come up here and let us cut open your brain?
Pass.